The rain had not stopped since morning, and Daniel stood at the window of his empty house, watching the water run down the glass like it was trying to wash away something that refused to leave. 3 years had passed since his wife died, and the silence in the rooms had grown teeth. It bit at him in the mornings when he reached for 2 coffee cups out of habit, and it bit at him at night when the other side of the bed stayed cold and untouched. His daughter had stopped visiting as often. His friends had stopped calling. Grief, he had learned, was patient. It did not need to shout to win. It only needed to wait. That was the evening she knocked on his door. Her name was Elena, and she was the daughter of Marek, the old carpenter who had built half the furniture in Daniel's house years ago. Daniel barely knew her, only a few words exchanged at her father's funeral the winter before. She stood on his porch with rain in her hair and a folder pressed to her chest like it held something fragile. "My father said you needed a wife," she murmured. Not meeting his eyes, Daniel almost laughed, though nothing about her voice was joking. He opened the door wider, more out of confusion than hospitality, and let her step into the hallway, dripping onto the wooden floor her father had once sanded with his own hands. "He said that to you?" Daniel asked. "Before he died. He said it more than once. He said you were a good man drowning quietly and that someone needed to notice." She opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in Marek's uneven handwriting, each one addressed not to Daniel, but about him. Marek had watched his friend fade for 3 years and had never known how to say it out loud. So he had written it down instead, page after page, hoping someone would carry the words forward when he no longer could. Daniel sat down slowly at the kitchen table. The letters spread before him like small confessions. He read of afternoons Marek had watched him sit alone on his porch staring at nothing. He read of a birthday Daniel had spent by himself, the cake untouched. He read, finally, a line that undid him completely. "If I go before I can fix this, Elena, promise me you'll knock on his door. Not for yourself, for him. Everyone deserves someone who notices they are still alive." Daniel's hands shook as he set the letter down. He looked at Elena, who was watching him now, her eyes glassy, her folder empty on the table. "He asked you to do this?" Daniel said. "Marry a stranger because he felt sorry for me?" "He didn't ask me to marry you," Elena said quietly. "He asked me to see you. The rest was never his to decide." She wiped her eyes and managed a small, unsteady smile. But maybe he wasn't entirely wrong about needing someone. Daniel didn't answer right away. He thought about the 2 coffee cups he still set out every morning. He thought about the silence that had become furniture in his home, as permanent as the table they now sat at. And he thought about Marek, a man who had spent his final months not fixing chairs or cabinets, but quietly trying to build one more thing before he left, a bridge between 2 people who had forgotten how to be found. "Maybe," Daniel said finally, echoing her father's word back to her. "I don't need a wife, but I think I need a friend who won't let me disappear." Elena laughed then, soft and surprised, the kind of laugh that comes when grief loosens its grip for just a moment. "That I can do." They sat together until the rain outside slowed to a whisper, talking about her father, about Daniel's late wife, about all the years neither of them had realized they were lonely in the same quiet way. It wasn't romance that grew between them in that kitchen, not at first. It was recognition. 2 people who had been carrying invisible weight, finally setting a small piece of it down in front of someone who understood. Weeks turned into months. Elena visited often, sometimes with tools to fix the things her father used to fix, sometimes with nothing but time. She taught him small things, how to sand a warped drawer, how to name a feeling instead of swallowing it. In return, he taught her that grief could be shared without being solved, that wounds only needed company, not a cure. Daniel began setting out only 1 coffee cup, then, without quite noticing when it happened, 2 again, this time for a reason that didn't hurt. Marek never got to see what his letters had done. He never saw Daniel laugh again or Elena find a home for her own grief inside his. But somewhere in the quiet space between an old carpenter's love for his friend and a daughter's, reluctant courage to knock on a stranger's door. Something new had been built. Not a marriage. Not yet, and maybe not ever. Just two people who had learned in the middle of their sorrow that being noticed was sometimes the difference between disappearing and beginning again.